Mm. Hello, and welcome everybody to our Women in Business 2024 course. This is Anna Schlapp speaking with her Utilising Your Neurodiversity as a Superpower workshop. And yeah, hand it over to Anna.
Thanks very much, Josh. Okay, yes, I was a bit shocked when I saw utilising neurodiversity as a superpower, because I certainly think we do have powers, but it can be a bit of a contentious word, superpower. So let's see what you think by the end of this talk. Okay. So I'm Anna Schlapp, and I've been coaching people with ADHD and other neurodivergent conditions from my base in Exeter for nearly a decade now. So I coach people in all aspects of ADHD and neurodivergence, autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, and various different walks of life and many different subjects, like ADHD symptoms, creative problem solving, starting our own businesses, artists and performers, productivity at work, emotional regulation, communication skills, confidence building, and so on. Well, a lot of the work I end up doing is on diving down into what people's strengths are and really helping them to focus on them and really leverage them in their businesses. So, welcome to this webinar. I'm just going to say that ways of working. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I do have ADHD and probably a bit of autism myself. So if I jump all over the place, you'll know why. So it'd be helpful if you had a pen and paper with you today to make notes for yourselves. And we are going to be doing a couple of exercises, so you might find it useful to write things down. Some of it you can put in the chat, but please have your camera on if possible, then everyone can see each other. Please wait until the end to ask questions. I'm going to rattle through a lot of stuff here, and if we stop to answer questions, we are going to run over time. We are probably going to be a bit tight for time because I like to give you as much information as I can. So we'll probably be going for about an hour, and then we'll have time for questions. I just want to check that everyone knows how to use the chat and is familiar with Zoom. Yeah? Anyone not familiar with Zoom? Okay. Josh, could you help me out? I can't see everyone at the moment. Is anyone saying no, they don't know how to use Zoom?
Well, right, so yeah, if anybody can't quite work it, give me a shout, type in the chat, wave your hands, do anything you feel you need to if you need any assistance. That's including throughout the workshop as well.
Great, thanks. Yeah, when I'm in presenter view, I can't actually see everyone. I can all the chat very well, so I'd have to keep jumping in and out of it just to explain to you what's going on for me here. We've done a bit of putting it in the chat for the people who got here before we began. I asked everyone to say what business you're in the chat, how long you've been doing it for, and the main reason you're attending this webinar. So I wonder if anyone who's just come in could also do that. That would be great. Thank you. So today, we're going to be looking at various different sections. So what we mean by the powers of neurodiversity, how can we make the best use of our strengths? And I'm focusing heavily on strengths in this webinar. What role does the environment play in terms of our neurodiversity, and what strategies, tools, and techniques are available? So neurodiversity itself is, it's, as you've got these two quotes here, it really started with autistic, just to give you a bit of background, started with autistic people. The term was first used in 1988 by a lady called Judy Singer, who was an Australian sociologist, and she mentioned this term in her thesis as a challenge to the idea that neurological differences are disorders instead of features. And she was the third in a generation of 3 people with autism. And since then, it's spread to refer to all types of neurodiversity. And it's a framework where great things are possible, but equally so, there are significant challenges. And personally, I think that when we can both mitigate for our challenges, that is, manage any symptoms we have and understand our own condition, and then use our strongest strengths, then our neurodivergence can be a superpower. Okay, and so what do we mean by a strength? So here's 3 ways of looking at strengths. Character strengths, which come easily and naturally to you, give you energy and feel like they're authentically you. And that could be things like kindness, creativity, fairness, gratitude, hope, perseverance, humility. There's 24 of those, and you can go to the VIA character.org site and take a free strength survey, which a lot of people do. Some of you may be familiar with that. Then we've got performance strengths. This is just really touching the surface. There's always more to know about all of these strengths. So qualities and abilities that help us do well in life and at work, like good communication skills, strategic thinking, and adaptability and flexibility. Something that people with ADHD quite often exhibit when they're entrepreneurs. It's a great, adaptability is a great strength to have when you're an entrepreneur. Sorry, I'm losing my voice already. That just won't do. So neurodivergent strengths, so traits and characteristics of our neurodivergent brains that are a part of our condition. For instance, empathy, hyperfocus, creativity. And we may not realize that some of the traits that we have can be used as strengths. So unless we find out about our conditions, the more we read, listen to podcasts, find out about things, because everyone is so very different, the more we can find out, the more likely we are to get a feel for what's going on for us, because we're all unique. So how can we identify our strengths? We can notice what feels easy and energizing. We can use questionnaires and assessments like the ones I've mentioned. Strengths Finder is another one. That gives you 34 themes or qualities, abilities, talents that you can, and lots of ideas for using them as well. You can ask other people, and if you're scribbling away to get all this stuff down off the slides, I just want to say, I am going to be sending out a copy of the slides afterwards. So you can save your wrists from overuse if you're just writing down the points on the slides. Don't worry, I'm sending, if you want the slides afterwards, that's fine. So another way is by asking other people for feedback. People you work with, people who know you well. So, you know, ask them, what do you think I'm good at? Where do you think I'm strong? And you might be surprised sometimes at the answers. There are some very nice ways of asking people, doing that like a character strength 360. So asking people where you see, what do they see in you as a strength? And asking them to give you 3 examples. And then getting to know our condition so we can get past any feelings of guilt and shame or taking it personally. You know, we might think, that we are hopeless at time management and not realize that's an executive function, and that if we can begin to understand the way our brain works, we're not going to feel so guilty, but we can get going on working on it, because getting stuck in a negative emotional state about something, it isn't a good way to move forwards, because we tend to get stuck there then, and it's demotivating to think bad thoughts about ourselves as well. So we can unpick our successes by understanding what we did well and where we were strong, and by looking at context as well, because we can have qualities that become strengths under the right conditions, but under unfavorable conditions we're not able to access them. So for instance, here's a very common one for people with ADHD, and other conditions as well have the same thing. People can, with ADHD, find it easy to hyperfocus when it's quiet and no distractions. And we can complete a lot of work really fast, but find it impossible to focus at all in an open plan office or a noisy and busy environment. And yet everyone's different. So some people like to go to a very noisy cafe and then they can hyperfocus. So not everyone is exactly the same, but context is really, really important. And we'll come on to that a bit in terms of environment. So then we can get to know a bit more about our the conditions that we have. And just to bear in mind, it can take a while to work out what's what, because a lot of people who have neurodivergence have more than one thing going on. It's very, very common for people to have 2 or 3 or more neurodivergent conditions in different degrees going on at the same time, or bits and pieces of one and a lot of another. So this is based on work by Mary Colley. She's a very interesting author, diagnosed with dyspraxia, ADHD and dyslexia, and she's produced a lot of work writing about those conditions, which you might find interesting. And then Nancy Doyle, Dr. Nancy Doyle, is a chartered psychologist, and she's produced this based on Mary Colley's work. I've put the extra things around the outside because I feel those are things that a lot of these have in common. And she's very much into strengths, drawing out the genius. She was the CEO of Inner Genius, which is very keen on drawing out the strengths and genius in people with neurodivergence. So this is a take on the strength side, and you'll see there's some overlap. I don't know if you can see my cursor at all, but for instance, creativity, I think, comes into pretty much all of these. Sensory awareness is definitely shared by ADHD and autistic spectrum condition, and quite a lot of the other ones. So we'll see in a moment. We'll see in a moment some of the other sides as well, just to balance it up a bit. But I think quite often we are so aware of our challenges that they sort of eclipse our strengths, which is why I'm so keen on focusing on the strengths to really balance the books, and to make us feel more optimistic, more motivated, and raise our own self-esteem, to make us feel good about ourselves as well. So the more time we spend focusing on our strength, the better, I believe. You know, quite often our strengths aren't that obvious because that's the water we're swimming in. And if we think things are easy, we may not consider them as a strength. So I'd like to just get you to think now about how much time do you spend focusing on your strengths? And how could you increase this? So just jot a few notes for yourself, maybe even put a percentage on it. You know, do I spend 50% of my time focusing on my strengths, or the things that I'm really good at, things that I find easy, the things I like to do? Or do I spend a lot of time, 75% of my time, trying to do things that I hate, like admin? Well, I don't know, that's my personal bugbear. You know, we can delegate. You know, once we've identified that sort of thing, you know, we can delegate the things we don't like to other people who do like those things. And then thinking about how you can increase the time that you spend in your strengths. Okay, so that's something to think about, and maybe for you to go away and develop later when you know a bit more. So I'm just going to put this up and you can read through this. So this is a few very strong qualities of neurodivergent females. There are differences between women and men, and I think I've got a slide for that later, but you know, these are some great qualities that female entrepreneurs have. I worked with a client who was feeling emails were really difficult for her. She was doing some marketing and she was doing it all through email, and she wasn't really enjoying that, so she was getting very distracted. And we talked about it, and really, you know, she's a very articulate, personable, who loves face-to-face meetings and talking to people. So at the end of that, she realized that what she needed to do was book a conference once every month or so and go off and be in the midst of a lot of people, networking, meeting new people, making connections. And that was a way, you know, it's not only okay for her to do it, but it was essential to support her in the way her brain worked. And just a few things, general things. There was some research done on people with ADHD. I don't know why it does that. Alertness and adaptability and high entrepreneurial intent were very helpful in driving positive outcomes for people who are starting their own and running their own businesses. Okay. So now you'll see around here some of the names of the neurodiverse conditions now included in the concept, and there are lots more as well. There are lots more aspects to neurodiversity and minority groups and so on. Some of the graphics you can find all over the internet are coming from this basis. You know, it's a sort of medical model, the old model of you're broken and there's things wrong with you because you're different from neurotypical people. I'm glad to say that in the time since the last time I did this, not quite the same talk a year ago, people are beginning to focus more on strengths, and there's a lot more graphics on the internet now relating to neurodivergent strengths, and I'll show some of those to you in a bit. But the deficit model of neurological difference was the traditional way of looking at people, and it still hangs around, unfortunately, in words, in articles, in descriptions of these conditions on medical websites. So, you know, something to look out for is that this slightly skewed view is everywhere, and not very helpful. So it's a good thing to be aware of that there are, and you know, sadly, there are still places in the world where people with autism are so misunderstood that they're incarcerated. and or receive physical punishment under the guise of helping them. You know, I've heard of shock therapy in the States, and we do in this country incarcerate young people with autism as well. It's a national scandal in my view, but I'm not going to get on my soapbox. I'm going to keep calm about that and continue with the webinar. I have an autistic daughter, so with learning disabilities. So just to give you a bit of a picture. So it's only towards the end of the 20th century, really, people begin to talk in terms of the strengths and benefits. Then we've got the appearance of the positive psychology movement in the 1990s, and then it was began to be recognized that pathologizing brain differences as if they must be deficient was a very one-sided way of looking at things. So in the middle, you can see there are lots of common issues. If you're trying to work out whether you have a condition, this kind of chart can be kind of useful, because it can you can begin to see where you know it's not really giving enough detail, and everyone's very, very individual. But dyscalculia is fairly self-explanatory: difficulty with numbers; dysgraphia, difficulty with writing; alexithymia, difficulty describing feelings. And so there are these common issues, and those tend to be what we call the executive functions, which I have a slide about later on. So it's worth recognizing that no two people with ADHD are exactly alike, no two people with autism are exactly alike. And then you've got all these mixtures where you might have a bit of this and a bit of that as well. So hopefully that makes some sense. And then we're going to talk about environment in a bit, the context that affects these sort of things. But we just have a look at this. This will be on the slides. So, you know, finding out as much as you can, getting diagnosed. The situation is pretty awful. It can take years rather than months to get diagnosed still in this country. And then even if you do get diagnosed, there is a terrible situation for people with ADHD who want medication, is that there are medication shortages now, and even people who have been diagnosed and have been using medication are finding it difficult to get supplies, regular supplies. So it's a bit of a roller coaster for some people at the moment, and I've coached a lot of people through times where they've, you know, not been able to access their medication, and therefore their functioning has really, really changed. So that can be very upsetting and difficult. Then we've got adaptations in equipment, other people, forums, groups. I do run a group in Exeter. We meet up approximately once a month. And then you've got coaching. ADHD and autism, other neurodivergent coaches can help you to get to know yourself better as well, and help you know what your strengths are. So I would like to ask you to do an exercise to think about what the things we're already doing at work to make our lives easier. So I'm going to start, I'm going to do it as a group, I think, and we're going to go round and then we can have it on the recording. So what's one thing you do at work to make your life easier for yourself? So I'm going to start the ball rolling. And what I do is I have a visual planner. I'm a very visual person. And if I can see my day in a visual format, then it makes it much easier for me to move things around and slot things in. So I'm going to go to the next person on the screen, and that is Sarah. would you like to share with us what's one thing you do at work to make your life easier?
I love that you think I can tell you one thing.
Yeah.
One thing that I do. So I flip my day. I don't work before 11 o'clock because I don't function before 11 o'clock. So the mornings are for me, I'm for doing stuff for me. And I don't finish till 8:30, which when you say that to people, they're like, oh, it's very late, but I'm wide awake then. And so I flip my day back to front.
Great. Love it. Yeah, I do the opposite. I start at 6 a.m. and finish early. Yeah. Okay. Would you like to pass to someone else, Sarah?
Off you go, Becky.
Hello. I don't know what I really do because I wing life. But I guess one of the things that I have just done is I purchased a pair of headphones because I work from home with 3 children and a husband, and sometimes the noise is just so crazy I can't focus. So I've got a set of headphones that I can just plop on and zone out a little bit and get on with what I need to get on with.
Right, really useful. Would you like to pass to someone else, Becky?
I'm going to pass to Kat because you're on my screen.
I also wing it. Notebooks, I think. I just a chronic list writer. I think that if I'm sort of struggling, then just brain dumping everything in a notebook seems to help. So I guess that's my main go-to. But yeah, I'm looking for more.
Great, thank you. Yeah. Could you pass to someone as well, please, Kat?
Lizzie?
I do a number of things other people do, chronic list making and stuff, but I found some Blair earbuds that kind of filter out the worst, of noise, so that when I'm working in the office, because I work mainly from home, but go into the office because there's so much melee of noise and small level noise. I just have some earphones that just filter out, so you can still hear, but just filter out certain extremes of frequency, which really helps.
Thank you. Could you pass to someone else as well, please, Lizzie?
I can't see the list from here. I can only see who's on the screen, who's got the camera on. So about Gemma gone? Gemma?
No, I'm happy to go next. Yeah, there's I got 2 things I guess I'm going to share. I think what I've learned a little bit is when I kind of get into something and hyper focus, I can forget a little bit about my self-care, like just drinking water, kind of all of those things. So like on my notebook every day I have a little water symbol and I tally it off as like a little kind of chart to remind myself to drink water. And I also do like these happiness hormones, and I try and do like something for my dopamine, something for my endorphins, and so I have like one listed. So and I kind of try and link them with my rewards system. When I complete tasks, I'm able to kind of like do something a bit creative as a bit of a tool. And then just reflection. I don't do it enough, but I kind of originally thought reflection was like dear diary, blah blah blah, and it just, that blank page just makes me kind of like that. So I kind of now just kind of maybe write random words and just kind of freestyle it, or I draw, or kind of do reflections in lots of different styles. But I think when I give myself the time to reflect, it's very powerful, and I don't do it enough. And so trying to get that in a little bit more. But yeah, they're the 2 things that definitely help me kind of with work and life, to be honest.
Great. Yeah, really great. Thank you, Gemma. Could you pass to somebody else? I think we'll have one more person. Unless somebody's really dying to share.
Then can someone wave at me to see who hasn't going through this? Oh, so I'm sorry if I get your name pronounced wrong here. Is it Estrine? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Estrin. Hi, I'm Estrin. So I noticed that I was working on a desktop computer, and I struggle with my energy levels and motivations. So if I then have to go to the computer to do it and move rooms when I'm not doing that, I wasn't doing it as much. So I bought myself a laptop and I keep it in my bedroom. And because I have rest periods and I get my best ideas when I'm resting or have meditated, and then I'm like, it's there. I don't have to move anywhere. I can just go do that thing. So that's what I do.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Alestrin. Does anyone else want to share anything that they do? People with their cameras off. Okay, we've got a few things going into the chat, so great, thank you. So yeah, and so what was it like for you hearing what other people do? How was that? Anyone?
For me, I like hearing. I'm not diagnosed yet, so I'm seeking my diagnosis, although it's very obvious because my life's very chaotic. And one of the things that I'm struggling with at the moment is understanding that having ADHD means that in my head, it meant that means I'm always going to be this way and it's always going to be very chaotic. So listening to other people, finding ways that they are managing, actually that's like really positive. And it's just nice to know that it is about now starting to learn the tools so that I can work better with what I've got.
Good. I'm really pleased to hear you say that, because yes, it absolutely is. It really is a huge difference. Yeah, once we can learn the tools and put them into practice, things can get a lot less chaotic, believe me. And then you can start really flying, enjoying your life. Great. And thank you very much, everyone, for sharing. So I'm just going to continue with environment. And I noticed with environment, there we go. I did notice that quite a few of the things that you were mentioning were to do with helping improve your environment or cutting out things which weren't helping from your environment. So it is a major part of how we can manage and help ourselves when we have these conditions. So, I mean, noise and sounds is a major one from a lot of people. Then even other people can be distracting. But as I said, some people find it really enjoyable to go into a cafe with their laptop and to do their writing or whatever it is. Some people prefer a bit of noise as long as it's kind of hubbubby background noise. Some people like music. Some people like music with their favorite words, or some people like music without words. It's very, very personal, and it's worth experimenting to see what it is that works best for you. Getting your physical environment set up for you for success. I mean, you were saying there about not liking your desktop, preferring to be in your bedroom where you feel more relaxed. That's really an interesting one. And I worked, there's colour of walls and so on. I worked with somebody who changed the colour of their wall, put up a picture that they liked, and then made their working environment far calmer and more conducive to how they wanted it. And getting that sense of control over your environment is really important as well, so that you're managing it and you're not at the mercy of various things that are coming at you. So deciding where you want to work can be really important. Looking after your virtual space as well as your actual physical space around you. You might want to decide to work at home, or you might want to go and have a particular office or share a space with someone else, or whatever it is. These decisions can make a big difference. You might not think it could, but it can. And then being a parent, have you got your kids at home in the holidays? Are you still trying to work? All this sort of stuff going on. Time for yourself is really important. It's amazing how taking time out of work helps you in work as well. So getting the balance right for that is really important part of the coaching that I do with people is, you know, quite often people are feeling overwhelmed or worn out and exhausted. And it's surprising how many times something will be missing, and it'll turn out to being something like getting the environment right. Then we got the sensory side of these conditions, particularly ADHD and autism. People with autism, it's about 98% of people have sensory sensitivities, and about 45 to 50% of people with ADHD. So we've got light, comfort, temperature, smells, sounds. You know, you've got the wrong kind of artificial light where you're working, with flickering light or ticking clocks or people chewing crisps, or, you know, it's just so many things that can drive us crazy. So, and we can't take our mind off them. Once we've heard something like that or seen something, it's very difficult to switch away from it. So headphones and screens and all those sorts of things are really, really useful. And there's masses, and on that adaptations and equipment slide that I showed you, there are masses and masses of suggestions for the kinds of things you can get. So it's worth just going to those sites and having a look at the sort of adaptations and things that you can get, because that might give you ideas and make you realize, oh yeah, that might be helpful. And then just being comfortable in your clothes. I have sensory sensitivities to tags in the back of, you know, to labels in my clothes. I have to cut them all out, otherwise, you know, I have been known to take off some clothes in the middle of town and have to go in the ladies to remove certain items of clothing that were far too uncomfortable because I just couldn't carry on for a moment longer wearing them. And then having plants, pictures of nature, managing interruptions and external distractions. That's a big one, particularly for ADHD. People who are tormented by working in open plan offices. You know, I've had to help people advocate various times for finding a room just to have a Zoom call in so they can have their ADHD coaching. It's incredible how people are not set up really to have, well, employees particularly can find it, you know, they don't take that into consideration, employers, for their employees. Then looking at how you manage your your email environment, your social media environment, the sorts of software you use. Are they friendly? Do they help you work with the way your brain works? And getting structures, systems and processes in place to help you. That's all parts of the things that I help people with. It can be incredibly important. You know, like what you were saying about having your day start at 11 o'clock. That's a structure. You know, you go from 11 to 8:30. That is a structure. That's a system you use for helping yourself. Okay, I just want you to have a quick look at environment. This is a very obvious. What's your feeling when you look at the picture on the left versus what's your feeling when you look at the picture on the right? So I know which one I would like to walk into to work in, and how hard it would be for me personally to work in that environment on the left. So that's just a very visual depiction of what it can be like, the difference. So here's some challenges and strengths. I'm just going to run through these very quickly, and we're doing for time. Okay. So you can read these. We have incredible gifts. You might have heard of Stephen Wilshire, drawing the London skyline in detail after one helicopter ride. David Tammet learned to be fluent in Icelandic in a week. Temple Grandin's a world expert in animal and livestock machinery. Chris Packham, he's produced a few really great programs on autism recently. Richard Branson, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, you know, people can be incredibly successful as entrepreneurs with these conditions. Then there are differences between men and women. Women are better at masking and fitting in. We can also tend to compare ourselves to others more. So I think that's probably about noticing the little details. We can tend to discount what we're good at because it feels easy. You know, it's harder to see the water we're swimming in. When things feel easy, we don't see them as a strength. But actually, that could be the key to our strengths. We tend towards collaboration rather than competition, which is a great plus. More sensitive to the feelings of others, hate unfairness. We can be people pleasers, which can make us great in helping roles. And we're often really dedicated to being tolerant and inclusive as well in our businesses. So, and then both sexes struggle with impatience and frustration. I think a lot of that is to do with just not knowing how our brains work as well. And we can hyper focus when interest is strong. So we're just going to go into the executive functions now, which was that bit in the middle of the blue slide a while back. So flexible thinking, response inhibition, working memory, emotional control, sustained attention, planning, prioritizing, organizing, time management, goal-directed persistence, metacognition, all these things. You can imagine trying to run a business without any of those things. You can see how key they are really to running a business. So it's finding out about what the way your brain works and how you know what interests you, and really getting other people to delegate to for things that you're not so interested in is really key. So we can also use our creativity, which is a huge plus for most of neurodivergent brains, using mind maps, colors, shape, music, words, things that amuse us. I mean, we've got a great sense of humor. That's another really positive part of having neurodivergence. I don't know whether it's because of all the adversity that we've gone through in our lives, but we've certainly ended up with a very good sense of good sense of humor. So there's a mass of stuff to learn about executive functions. You can go on courses specifically to learn about the executive function parts of these neurodivergent brains. And I work a lot with people on different aspects of how these interact with working life. So that, you know, that would make a whole webinar just in itself. So I'm going to run through these fairly speedily. I'm going to leave them on the screen for a second or two so that they're on the recording for long enough to look at, and then of course you'll have the slides as well. So there are lots of these things about the positives, and I encourage you to seek these out and then look at the positives and focus on them and think, well, how can I use my, do I have a good attention to detail? Oh, maybe I do. So perhaps I could use that in more places in my work. Creativity, you know, am I methodical? And other strengths, you know, honesty and loyalty, exceptional memory for facts and figures, passionate. All these things are there for us to think about and maybe recognize in ourselves and develop. Here's some for dyslexia. Great at three-dimensional visual thinking, creative thinking. There's that empathy and creativity again. Strong memory skills. Memory can be very variable across these conditions. So sometimes people can have great long-term memory, but not so great short-term memory. And then that's when we need supports. You know, there are different kinds of memory. Memory for our own lives can be very variable. We can forget what we did last week or yesterday or what we had for breakfast even. But we can remember certain things that we're very, very interested in, perhaps. So it's going into that in more detail rather than just putting an umbrella over it and saying, oh, I've got a hopeless memory. That doesn't give room to distinguish what actually is going on and where we're strong. Some more strengths of dyslexia. So again, you can go back through these and find out more about them. Think about them in terms of yourself. So, here we have I rather like this, the ADHD strengths iceberg. What people think we're good at, talking fast and creativity. And actually, we are rather good at quite a lot of other things as well. So there's a great use of our sense of humour too. Okay, so I'm just going to zip through these because we are going to run over anyway, I think. But really, I mean, I'm passionate about helping people see their strengths. It's surprisingly easy to see strengths in other people and surprisingly difficult to see them in ourselves sometimes. So if we know, imagine the difference it would make if you did know what your strengths were and you were able to focus on them every day and say, right, I'm going to use a bit of that strength today. I'm going to need a bit of that one. So Dr. Ned Hallowell, who's recognised as a world expert in treating adults and children with ADHD, and he's written loads of books, and he has ADHD himself, and some of his children have it too, so he really knows it from all sides. He's got very interested in how much of this symptomology of ADHD fits with the entrepreneurial brain. And we do know that ADHD is a paradox. And that's partly to do with what I was talking about before with the environment. So context is really important. So you might be able to do things in some conditions, but not in others, as I was saying. So it can super focus, can't focus when you're not interested, or when your environment's too noisy or busy. You can be really creative, or you can, he says the flip side of impulsivity is creativity. So impulsivity can be problematic because we just dive into things without thinking, but also that can be a strength of entrepreneurs because we're willing to take risks that if we stopped and thought about it, we might not do something. So then curiosity, huge energy, and the flip side, easily distracted, can't sit still. So I'll leave you to think about these and see if, any of these resonate with you. That's just a really interesting way of thinking about it, that we have these two flip sides. So when we see a problem, maybe we should think, well, what's the flip side of that? What's the strength side of this? Procrastination, for instance. So I'm going to encourage you to just make a few notes and then to continue this exercise afterwards to think about which of your strengths are you underusing at work? What do you know about yourself? So for instance, I'm a visual think I'm a very visual. I'm an artist as well. I like painting, and I've discovered that if I have a visual planner, that really helps me. Well, I've recently begun to use visual graphs and diagrams for my marketing steps so that I can see so much more easily than I can with a list. If I write a list, it's just a load of words. If I put it in a little graph with different bits going here, there, and different bubbles and arrows, suddenly it starts to make sense when I look at it, and I can immediately see what I need to do. So thinking about the way you work, you know, maybe there are some character strengths, some neurodivergent strengths, some performance strengths, and you can use the slides from today to go through and pick out some of your strengths and think about which ones you want to develop. Okay, so we're going to draw to a close now. So, yeah, maybe you can have a list of your strengths that you can refer to often. Celebrate your wins, and see which of your strengths you were using when you had a win, when something went really well. Or make a plan to ensure you are using your strongest strengths. So make sure, how do you make sure you're living in your strengths as much as possible? What are your strategies for using strengths to manage areas of work not so interesting? How will you maintain your work-life balance using your strengths? You know, you can bring strengths into just about every aspect of being at work. The more the merrier. What environment, structures, systems and processes help you? Who could you collaborate with? Where do you need help to free you up to work with your strengths in mind? So, you know, there are something perennial challenges which are going to come round and round. So we can be strategic about that and use our strengths to prepare for times when we might have a lot on and we don't want to be forgetting about our self-care, for instance. So getting the interface between managing ourselves and using our strengths. So in terms of practical support from another person, I highly recommend you look into Access to Work. So Access to Work can provide people, it can provide support workers. If there are things that you're not so great at doing and you want someone to do them for you, Access to Work will provide the funding to pay for an assistant, admin support, you know, a business mentor. They'll pay for ADHD and autism coaches, as well as equipment, adaptations and software when you're self-employed. So it's a fantastic resource and I really recommend you use it. We've just got a new government in. Hopefully they will continue this and see how important it is. But there's a whole industry now building up of organizations who provide workers, who can source them, who can match people for you. So if you do have things that you are finding are sort of slowing you up and are not the kind of things you really want to be doing, you know, billing people, creating invoices, doing this sort of day-to-day admin kinds of things when you want to be working in your business, talking to clients or whatever it is. You know, think about the things that only you can do and the things that somebody else could do quite easily if you told them how to do it. So I highly recommend that. And then this is again that helps slide with the adaptations and equipment that you can get. So some of these sites, you know, you can go to the Job Accommodation Network. They've got a fantastic resource of, you know, you put in a thing like ADHD or autism and it'll bring up masses and masses of equipment, apps, earphones, timers and reminders, all kinds of stuff that you might not even think about or have come across that can help you. So well worth having a look at that. And then I just finally want to say, really, that this is a really important part. Again, it's another bit which could have been a whole subject in itself, and it forms a large part of the coaching work I do with many people. And it's really essential for supporting you to make best use of your strengths. So, you know, if you haven't had any sleep the night before, you're not really going to be at your best for using your strengths or working well. So it's, you know, maximising your strengths is also about self-care and managing your symptoms, doing the things you need to manage your symptoms. And so, you know, here's some basics. Sleep, movement or exercise, good nutrition, hydration. Sounds like common sense, but they're also an essential foundation. Quite a lot of times people will find they're struggling and they've forgotten about exercise, or they're struggling and they've been eating loads of sugar and trying to burn the midnight oil, drinking 10 cups of coffee a day and not eating, feeling a bit lightheaded. So interest and stimulation, energy and tiredness, medication as well for some, particularly ADHD, making sure dopamine levels are sufficient. I love those happy hormones, happiness hormones that one of you mentioned. That's great. You know, we can really leverage our conditions by looking at our brain chemistry as well. Lots of different foods can help different things. That's another webinar on its own as well. The interactions of food. I mean, I will just say quickly, quite often when you have a neurodivergent brain and nervous system, we can be deficient or need much more of certain vitamins or minerals or micronutrients. So, you know, making sure we have enough of those things to help our brain work is really important as well. So self-care outside of work will support you in work as well. What were we talking about? Taking breaks, meals, snacks, and things like that. So some success tips for neurodiverse brains. Learn as much as you can about your condition, connect with others who will help you understand yourself and your unique strengths, find your niche, set up your environment, make use of the adaptations and equipment, do things your own way, find your own way, ask for help, pay attention to self-care. You really are your own most valuable asset when you're an entrepreneur. And if you're struggling, please don't let it get so bad that you risk burnout. Ask for help. You know, I'm here. There are lots of other people who can help you. Lots of organizations, lots of other coaches, lots of other people that you can get to take some of the pressure off. And then just finally, these final thoughts. Excuse me. Of various things to pay attention to. And I'm going to finally finish with, I am going to finish with 2 quotes. If I can get them to come up. So Edward Hallowell wrote in a poem to his 5-year-old daughter, "No brain is the same, no brain is the best. Each brain finds its own special way." And I really love that, because we are really all unique. And then from When I'm Among the Trees by Mary Oliver, I really love this quote. "And you too have come into the world to do this, to go easy, to be filled with light and to shine." And I totally believe that. We can all shine in our own way. Okay. So thank you very much for listening. And now we can go on to the Q&A. So I'm going to completely stop sharing, I think. There we are.
Can I jump in with a question, please?
Certainly, please do.
One of the things that I found make me really overwhelmed is I will try and put structures in place or systems in place, and I will hyper focus on that system or whatever structure I'm using for a week and then just drop it off. So one of the things that I've started to, I guess, a negative thought pattern I've got myself into is I just can't do structure, and this is just, I don't know how to get systems in place. So when I'm hearing you say that that's a way we should be using our ADHD, I don't know how to do that. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I mean, firstly, I don't like the word should. Because you could be, yeah. And the other thing about ADHD is things become a bit like the furniture. We get used to them and they're not novel anymore. So when things are new and interesting, new systems, new apps, I've lost track of how many apps, new productivity apps I've used. If they start to get a bit samey, then the interest is going down. And also there's a thing about rewards and durations, is that you can get a reward, something can be rewarding, but then if you've got enough of the juice out of it, you might not be needing it anymore. It might not be the thing, so it's okay to drop things and to not keep them going.
I've definitely found that.
Yeah.
I used to really sort of beat myself up if I had a new system and it was brilliant and it was working, and then it just didn't, and I'd feel so deflated. But then I just sort of realized that I just need to switch my systems up every couple of months or weeks or however, depending on what it is. And as soon as I feel that happening now, I'm like, right, time for a new system. And then I get all excited about that, and it seems to work.
Yeah.
For as long as it works for, and then I just let it go and try something else.
That's right, absolutely. And I have that sort of thing for scheduling. Is I go around about 3 or 4 different methods. Sometimes I'll use mind mapping, sometimes I'll use a notebook. I switch them up, like Kat said. We call it resparklising in ADHD coaching. It just needs to make it a bit more zingy and pop out at us a bit more.
I'm just wondering if that's the same as how I just buy a new diary every 2 months and think it's going to change my life, and then
could be
just use a new diary every couple of months.
and you may be looking for something that works with the way your brain works as well, and it may be that these have been put together by neurotypical people, possibly, and that it's a neurotypical diary, and that a round peg isn't necessarily going to fit in a square hole. So that's another part of it to think about as well.
It sounds like a new business idea.
I think also there's an element of, a lot of the time, the systems that we put in place because we have heard about them, or we've seen them, or they are sort of around in society, and you think, oh, people do that and it really helps. And it's about taking a step back, but finding someone to work with you who can work out what works for you, because with all the systems in the world, they have to work for you. And things, so an example for me, so my washing, cannot keep on top of my washing. Now, anyone in my life will say, well, you're making it harder for yourself because you've got about 6 different washing bins. Yeah, but you know what I'm doing? I'm making it easier to put washing away. I split my washing: tops, trousers, jumpers, underwear, dresses. I only wash the same things together. Now, when you look at that system from the outside, it looks like I'm making more work for myself, but I'm not, because the bit I find overwhelming is putting washing away. So if I wash it in groups, I've only got to have one drawer open when I then put them, or I've only got to have my dress, my wardrobe open for my dress like that. And so you've got to find what works for you, and it is a bit of trial and error. But the more time you spend with people who get you and are willing to go, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Right, that's not working. Let's try something else.
Yeah.
The more likely you are to find the things that work specifically for you, and not the things that work for ADHD people or the things that work for autistic people. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely think we need to be very, and that takes a certain amount of self-confidence, doesn't it? I think to think, yeah, well, actually, no, I want something that works for me, for who I am, and never mind if it works for someone else, it may just not be the right thing for me.
And just to add as well, like when I went from being employed to kind of, yeah, like kind of self-employed, setting this sort of like business plan up, like it was kind of a real, like I had structure at work, I had people I needed to be accountable to, there was loads of things that I knew I needed for my neurodiverse brain, and it was such a shift and a lot of kind of, yeah, like kind of finding what worked for me. And I think just self-compassion, you know, like just sort of saying it's okay to kind of not find the perfect solution, and you know that's all right, and just like kind of not giving myself a hard time, kind of like that self-compassion was really important when I navigated that change. And you know, see a system is constantly evolving, use your strength to be, you know, whatever in my strength around creative and kind of finding different solutions. And I kind of then think, okay, I got this system and I'm just going to keep tweaking on it, building on it, you know, playing with it to make it work, and kind of, you know, and that's an ever evolving as life changes, circumstances change, you know, it's kind of an evolving systems. They need to evolve with us.
Yeah, absolutely, that's right, we don't stay static either, so yeah, we can grow and change, and what works for us one year might not work by the next year. That's a very good point. Anyone else?
I also just share this, I got a timer. A new oh sorry, I've jumped in with that. Should I go? I've got this timer that I got it because it's got like the rainbow colors. And
oh, lovely, yes.
Oh yeah, can you see? Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
And it's and I kind of use that to sort of keep, you know, especially if I'm doing a task I don't like, and I'm like, I kind of use that for like, okay, 30 minutes on this, it's just 30 minutes, it's, you know, get through 30 minutes of that and you'll feel okay afterwards. And it doesn't tick, and which, so there's no noises of it.
I swear by those, they're brilliant.
Yeah, yes, yeah, a game changer as well, because it feels like there's a bit more like boundaries in what I'm doing with different tasks. I found that really helpful.
I totally,
rainbows, I loved.
That's really lovely. And also just on ticking, you know, that's one thing that really put me off Pomodoros, is that they tick and tick and tick, and it just made me so aware of time passing that it was too much. I was more focused on the time passing than actually on doing the thing. So yeah. Elestrin, what were you going to say?
I was going to say about hang on. So when so like this, there's a whole load of stuff to do, and I go, oh, I need to do all this stuff, and then I find it hard to know where do I start, and then I kind of do all this work, and then I'm like, I forget then that I've done it, or to look back at it, or then to take what I need from that. So have you got any suggestions or tips on where to start and some kind of like basic like some like brief steps, I guess, for like start here, then try this, and then go back to this or something, if that makes sense.
Right, okay. Well, I mean, there's a lot in there. I mean, getting started, we might just brainstorm what we think the steps are to start with. And breaking it down into steps can be really helpful, and then show us. If we don't know where to start and we just pick one of those steps, then sometimes the brain will kick in and say, oh no, that's not right, it's got to be that one. So we may not know to begin with, which is, you know, sequencing is one of the executive functions. So not knowing what order to do things in. So breaking down something into steps, chunking it down, can make it seem more manageable because you can just pick one step at a time.
So I'm very good at all the brainstorming.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then I come up with so many ideas that it's too much. And then my brain goes, yeah, don't want to do that anymore. That's
right. Okay. So then you need a filter, which the brain doesn't really have itself sometimes, just to say, right, I'm going to pick 3 of these at random, maybe.
okay.
And then if you object to that, you could pick another 3 until you actually get one that you do like. How does that sound?
I love that. Thank you.
Can I just share what I do with that? So I write everything down that's in my head, all the 101 million things that I feel like I should be doing yesterday. And then I've got a big whiteboard in my office, but I split my lists into, I've got to remember now, time sensitive, stressing me out. Do you know what? I'm trying to remember. I could just walk to the office. That is exactly what I'm going to do right now. So, stressing me out, time sensitive, stuff to put in the diary, work related, general to do, and ideas for the new business. And then this one at the front is my time sensitive and stressing me out. So I put all my, what's my other whiteboard? I have my little whiteboard, which hilariously I can't find. Oh, it's over there. Yeah, so I have my little whiteboard. So I write everything that comes to my head on my little one. And then I stand in my office and split it into those sections, because what I find is particularly the 2 categories of stressing me out and time sensitive, what I find is I automatically go to things that are stressing me out and I ignore the things that are time sensitive. So by having things that are just stressing me out and things that are just time sensitive, by then having a group that's time sensitive and stressing me out, that's where I need to start. Because, you know, the process of organizing those lists is what makes you realize. And sometimes I write stuff in one place and I'm like, you don't belong there. And that's why I do it on a whiteboard, because I'm about to put somewhere else. And I actually, the time it takes me to split the lists up and to categorize things, while it feels like the list writing is taking longer than it should because I've now written all the lists twice, actually I'm then more productive in the time when I'm doing stuff, because I'm not sitting at my desk going, you know, maybe I'll just go for a walk.
Yeah, and
I can't cope, so you know.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
and the other thing about when you say about like doing stuff, so this is where my other half and I have a massive debate. I cross things out and he's like, it's on a whiteboard, why don't you rub it out? And I'm like, well, because then I don't know I've done anything. And so he will rub things out, and then I'm like, but now I feel like I've done nothing with my day because I can't see what I've done. So I cross out, and then when I feel like lots is crossed out, I rub those out and then shimmy everything up. But if I rub it out as I go along, I'm like, well, I've done nothing today. What was the point?
Yeah.
I
think, absolutely. And I think that shows great self-awareness. If you know that one type of category is eclipsing the other, and then it sounds like you're a very visual person. You need things up and where you can see them. And quite often people's with ADHD's walls are absolutely covered with stuff. And you know, and having a small one so you can put your ideas down and then transfer it. It might seem like these are the systems and processes which can really help. It might seem like you're taking extra time, but think of the time you would waste by losing things, by forgetting things, you know, the penalties that might be involved. It's so worth it. And I agree with what you said about having, you know, visually, if you cross things out and don't rub them out, then you can feel productive at the end of the day because you've got a crossed off list and you can see exactly what you did.
Also think about where, so like my little whiteboard is in the living room, because I mean, as most of you will probably realize, you don't think of something when you're actually doing something. You think
No.
of something when you're driving, or when you're in the shower, or when you're watching crime drama, or, you know, all those important things. And so I have it in here so that when I'm sitting doing my knitting, watching a bit of Midsummer Murders, and my brain goes, we should do that thing, I write it down because it's here. If I know that I have to get up off the sofa, stop my knitting, lose which row I'm in, pause the TV to go write it in the office, never gonna happen. So I keep that one to hand. I also have a notebook on my bedside table for when I wake up in the middle of the night and think that's a great idea. You know, so it's those, I know that the structure is in the office and that's on the wall. So when I'm like, what do I need to do? That's where I head. But the kind of like, I've thought of that thing has to be more mobile.
Absolutely. And how many creative ideas do we lose just because we haven't got the thing with us to write it down? And also our variable memory. We might think, oh, I'll remember that later. But do we? No, we don't. So yeah, really, really great tips. Okay, well, how are we doing? I mean, I hope this has been helpful this morning, and like, you're really welcome to get in touch with me, you know, to email me. My email's up there on the slide, I think, the last slide, or, you know, when you get the slides through. If I can be of any help.
I feel like I've talked. Sorry, I'll let you finish.
Yeah, you know, you can also join the Exeter, if you're in Exeter or anywhere near. There are meetup groups that you can go and meet other people and get peer support and tips from people as well. So
can I just reply to something that Rosemary has written in the chat? How do you find a neurotypical person to outsource executive function? My advice is don't find a neurotypical person to outsource executive function. My advice would be find another person that's full of wonderful quirks to outsource. Because so I have an Amanda. I can't tell you what Amanda does. She just sorts my life out. But her daughter's autistic, her husband's ADHD. She's just a bit of everything. If I try and have someone to support me who doesn't get when I've like burst into tears because the onions are not cut in the way the onions need to be cut for heaters, it's never going to work. So my advice would be don't find a neurotypical person. Find someone that is just a bit weird, wonderful, and that gets you, regardless of what their diagnosis or label might be. I will shut up in a minute.
Great. And I didn't mean great to you. We'll shut up in a minute. I meant great to your to your comments. I think there is certainly something to be said for, you know, making use of the neurotypical neurodiverse community that we have. In terms of, and there are lots and lots of these admin assistants who are neurodiverse and advertise themselves on LinkedIn and through these other organizations. Somebody put up one of them there. What was it called? This Is Me agency. Can I just ask Josh whether the chat will be available when people see the recording? Because there's lots and lots of valuable stuff on there that would be really useful to be able to access afterwards.
There is usually, the chat usually gets recorded as well.
Okay, fantastic. Great. Well, does anyone else have anything else to add or to ask about? Okay, well, thank you all so much for coming. It's been a pleasure to meet you. And I really wish you all well in your businesses and in your lives. And be delighted to cross paths with any of you again. So, you know, do keep in touch if you want to, or yeah, all the best. Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you to BIPC for hosting. Thank you, Josh, for your support this morning. And we're going to finish then.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.